Awesome. We're a couple minutes past the hour, so I'd love to get started. My name's Andrea. I'm going to be your host for today's webinar. I am with Juris Education. So I do have a couple of quick housekeeping rules, so to speak, before we get started. As mentioned, this webinar is recorded, so you will receive a recording within the next day or two in your inbox. As well, in terms of time, we're looking at running this webinar for about 45 minutes. 30 minutes of content and 15 minutes of Q&A. Throughout the course of the presentation, if you have any sort of questions for our host, or I should say that the host works, if you have any questions for Tamar, please definitely put them in the inbox and we'll try and get to them at the end of the webinar tonight. So with that being said, I'd love to begin our presentation titled Insider Tips for Law School Recommendation Letters. Quick overview, so we'll be discussing how to choose the best recommenders, what makes a recommendation letter stand out, tips for requesting a recommendation letter, followed by that Q&A that we mentioned. So before I pass it over to Tamar here, I wanted to let you know a little bit about who we are as a company and sort of what we stand for. Whether this is your first webinar or you've been here a couple of times, we welcome you. So Juris Education is a globally recognized law school admissions consulting firm offering comprehensive support from test preparation to law school admissions and even bar exam tutoring. With a 94% acceptance rate, our students gain entry into the top law schools in the United States. Last cycle alone, our T14 acceptance rate was 34%, which is almost 6 times higher than the national average of 5.7%. We believe in starting the law school application process as early as possible. For college sophomores, we offer pre-law advising and profile development. This focuses on building each student's professional cover and resume to highlight their most meaningful experiences and elevate their profile. To have candidates stand out, we assist in enhancing transcripts and GPA, identifying organizations and internships, creating a timeline for LSAT and application preparation, and pinpointing specific areas of interest. Our goal is to help students gain a strong foundation and understanding of what schools really are looking for and building a profile that sets them apart from other applicants. While our counselors support students in building their profiles, our LSAT coaches work closely with them to provide personalized one-on-one tutoring. Students take an official LSAT diagnostic test so tutors can assess their weaknesses and, of course, their strengths. This helps create a custom study plan structured for the days, weeks, and months ahead. We tailor our approach to each student's unique needs and schedule, providing the right assessments and lessons as they become familiar with the test content, strategies, and of course, format. Interim tests monitor and track progress, allowing us to modify study plans and build an upward trend leading to the official test date, whenever that may be. On average, we see a 12-point increase for 45 plus hours of tutoring and offer a 165 plus LSAT score guarantee with our 60-hour program. Once we help shape an outstanding candidate, we support students in creating the perfect application. Law schools review applicants holistically, and we assist with every step of the process. Our support starts with a detailed profile analysis, diving deep into the student's stats and experiences. This guides the creation of a well-balanced list of target, safety, and reach schools. We also help build strong resumes and obtain letters of recommendation, that's why you're here tonight, from the right recommenders. Our services come through the interview process and include waitlist strategy support and scholarships assistance until students receive their acceptances. Our admissions counselors are also essay writing experts who will brainstorm, outline, and edit until your supplemental essays and personal statements are perfect. These essays showcase the best aspect of our students, connecting their life journeys with the themes of each school they apply to. Whether it's your main application or scholarship essays, we've got your back with unlimited essays, or edits, I should say. Overall, our goal is to build the perfect candidate application. We use every tool in our skill set to ensure the products we create with our students stand out from the rest. If you're interested in learning more about us, our packages, we offer personalized free consultations via video, phone, or email, whichever one suits you. Our admissions counselors are ready and willing to help you through the process, so you don't have to navigate it alone, no matter where you are in the application process. With that being said, I'd love to pass it over to our panelists. Tamara, I'll let you go first. I know Christina's in the room, just having a technical difficulty. So if you want to start this off, that would be great.
Yeah, of course. I'm Tamara. I use she, her pronouns. I graduated from the University of Michigan Law School a handful of years ago now. And I am barred in California and will shortly be barred in Washington, D.C. I just moved to D.C. to be a professor at American Law School. So I'm hoping that was enough time for Christina to hop in. Hi.
Hi, hello everyone. My apologies for the technical difficulties. Taking the bar in 12, 13 days now, and I was in the middle of a practice exam, and so it was a little touch and go there. So I just graduated from Northwestern Law at the JD MBA, taking the bar like a week and a half. So that's been fun. We'll let you know how it goes, but I'm excited to be here with you all.
Awesome. So we're going to just jump right in. And like we said, please feel free to put questions in the chat. We'll have some time for questions at the end too, but we don't want you to forget what those questions are. So top law schools, and honestly, all law schools are kind of all looking for really similar things. They're interested in seeing high GPAs, rigorous coursework. They definitely want to see an upward trend in grades. So if you had a struggle bus of a freshman year, that I think they think that's kind of normal. They want to see that you grew into being a better learner and studier. Schools care about LSAT scores. I wish I could sit here and be like, scores don't matter, but I can't because that would be a lie. Schools care about your LSAT scores. And they like to see consistent academic performance with the caveat of kind of upward trends being very normal. They also want to see lots of personal qualities, right? So some of those things are like integrity, resilience, leadership. They want to see well-rounded candidates. And the way that you can really show those sorts of qualities are, of course, through your personal statement and any additional supplemental statements you have to write, but also through your recommendation letters. And I think what you really want to think about is your recommendation letters kind of echoing some of the messaging that you're already doing in your personal statements and things, but it gives admissions officers kind of another set of eyes on you, because it's one thing for you to say, like, I'm resilient, I'm a great leader, I have integrity. And it's a different thing to have multiple recommenders highlight those qualities that you have.
Awesome. So we can talk about professional and extracurricular involvement. That's super important. You want to do things you're passionate about and things that may be relevant to maybe the type of law that you're interested in. But if it's not, you want to do something that you can talk about with passion and kind of, draw on that for your personal statements, draw on that for maybe the type of work you may want to try going into law school. You might not know what you want to do, but it's important to make meaningful connections and have meaningful experiences that you can talk about, and that make you a more well-rounded person. And that comes through leadership, community service, and just making use of your time in a positive way.
Awesome. So we'll jump into a little bit more. Christina was talking about this, and this will kind of come in from some of your supplemental essays. A lot of schools look for diversity statements, if that's something that I think people have probably heard about, but also schools love to not call it that. And so a lot of times there's this like supplemental essay where you talk about something that is unique about you, or like demonstrates that you, I don't know, will be able to like engage with people that have different life experiences than you. All of those things kind of are the diversity statement. Top colleges, again, all law schools really value diverse backgrounds. They want to be able to put students in a classroom and know that their life experiences are different, and those different life experiences will actually make the classroom time better and more important and more valuable. And you aren't just talking about contracts or property in kind of a vacuum. You have a bunch of people who can say kind of different things about like, oh, this was my experience with a lease I had one time, or this was my experience, I've been a landlord before, or those sorts of things. So that's kind of the part of the reason that law schools really care about diversity. They know that it impacts the type of classroom experience everyone will have, and it will make you a better lawyer to be able to engage with people that have different experiences than you do. And so in that vein, you also want your recommendation letters to be able to emphasize how your experiences are different and what makes you unique, and how that will contribute to their academic environment and make it a richer environment overall. So here are some strategies. I'll hand it back over to you, Christina, to get us started. But we have a handful of tips and tricks for how to make your recommendation letter stand out.
Awesome. Okay, and this is super important. Choosing the right recommenders. It's such an important choice and decision. You want to select people who know you very well. I know there's kind of this inclination to go with someone who maybe has like a higher position or, sounds nicer, even though they don't know you as well. You really want to ask someone who knows your work, seen your work, and kind of talk about you as a person in detail. The last thing you want is someone to write like, yeah, this person's cool, I guess, you know? You don't really want a generic letter. You want this person to be able to speak to specific instances where you've done something that they, loved, or that was really interesting. And kind of, you can tell when someone writes about you, like how well they know you. It's not something you can really hide. And when you're thinking about someone choosing between applicants and they're looking at what people are saying about them, because they don't, some schools do have interviews, but they don't really get to meet you. And when they're looking at some of these letters and they want to decide between two candidates and someone has like a glowing recommendation and so many, you can see how many touch points they have with that person. They've worked together, they've seen, their work style and, their passions. And then you kind of get this more generic letter. They don't really care what the byline is of, that person's position. So you really want to, weigh weigh your options and really tend to go for someone who knows you a little bit more. And I think a lot of institutions want you to lean someone more academically, especially if you're not out of school too many years. Obviously, if you have a lot of years of work experience, definitely, have some of your employers talk about you. But I think law schools definitely want to um, learn more about your academic experience and your connections with your professors. And something that really helped me as I was talking to my recommenders, because, professors, they have a lot going on and you don't even know how many other people are asking for recommendations, and this is something that they're doing out of the kindness of their heart to, help you get to where you want to be. You want to give them context, and you want to kind of say, these are the schools that I'm interested in. If you know what type of law you want to do, or for me, when I was building my application kind of had a theme, the kind of traits that I wanted to tell schools that that this is the kind of student you'd be getting if you accepted me. This is who I am. And you could see that through these three traits or three, large experiences. And so if you can give your recommendation, your recommender context through your giving them, I set my recommender, my personal statement, my resume, my diversity statement, really my entire application. I'm like, this is my application. This is what I'm interested in. Obviously, if you don't have those things, you don't have to, but giving them as much information as possible can help them write a very well-rounded letter and give them more context as to what to communicate to the schools.
So just to kind of reiterate what Christina was saying, you do want to provide that context and that guidance. Sometimes that guidance and that context can look like, as Christina was saying, like, here is all my application materials. Here are all the schools I'm applying to. Sometimes that context and guidance is actually saying, like, I'm hoping that you might be able to talk about this instance in class. I'm hoping that you can talk about what you saw when I was working on this project in a group setting. I'm hoping that you can really focus on the theme of integrity. Whatever that thing is, you can provide that guidance. Some professors might be like, no, thanks. I have my own thing. I'm going to do it my way. Some people will really appreciate the guidance, right? I have written my fair share of recommendation letters for students. They are sometimes like pulling teeth. They're not that fun to write, guys. I hate to tell you, it's not like a walk in the park. I'm having a blast while I'm doing it. And so if a student can provide me with some ideas about like, these are some things that I think would be a good thing to mention, great. Love that. Thank you so much for taking some of that idea brainstorming thing away from me and helping me get to the next step faster. So make sure that you provide that level of context. And I will also say, like, I often recommend when you first reach out to recommenders saying, I am happy to provide my resume, my personal statement, the school list, whatever. And some people will say like, no, I really don't want that. That's too much. And I definitely don't want to read it. And some people will be like, yes, please provide that to me. And so by proactively offering, I think it really shows that you are, you're just really prepared and that you're going to support them in whatever they need to get a strong recommendation letter out.
Awesome. And so to that point, you can also, highlight some of your achievements and say, maybe you weren't directly related to this achievement, but it kind of speaks to, but what we did together kind of speaks to my overall passion for this. And if you could tie this in, this would be great, And so it's always important to say, like, these are the things I'm most proud about, and I'm really, you know, honing in on my application. So if you could pay special attention to that or kind of see where that fits into your recommendation, that'd be super helpful. And so obviously, some people might say, I got my own template, don't talk to me anymore, I'll submit it. And some people, and I feel like in my instance, a lot of my recommenders really wanted my input because, we were close enough and they're like, yeah, like, what do you want me to say? Like, how do you want me to talk about you? And so if you, find someone that's, you know, that you really have like a strong personal connection with, they'd be happy, in some instances to really hone in on the things that you want to talk about. Okay, so frequently asked questions.
So I'm actually going to hop quickly right in here and check the chat to see if there's any sort of questions. Let's quickly. So far, I don't see any questions, but again, we encourage you to just pop them in there and we'll make sure we get to them towards the end of the webinar. In the meantime, Tamar, Christina, I'd love to hear from you. Is there something you'd like to share with our audience that we necessarily haven't covered to this point and might not necessarily cover in the rest of the presentation? Whether that be like your number one tip or anything you want to explain a little bit more?
I think we get into this in a little bit, but like the thing that I just want to shout from the rooftops about recommendation letters is you need to ask them very early and you need to tell them that they're due earlier than they're actually due, because people always wait till the last minute to write recommendation letters. And because law school admissions are rolling, they won't review your application until your rec letters are in. And if that is the only thing holding your application back, you are not going to be happy with your recommender. So I had a student last season who told her recommenders that like when the due date for applications was, which was like not until January, February, but she was planning on having her applications in by October, and the professor wrongly thought that he could get his recommendation letter in January or February, and she had to ultimately ask him to remove his recommendation letter because it wasn't going to be done in time. And that to me is just like a nightmare, because then you're also like creating kind of a weird relationship with your recommender that you maybe would have been able to use. And anyway, do it early, give them an early deadline, check in on them often, be like just under the annoying threshold, right? Like you don't want to annoy them, but you want to be like getting close. That's where you want to be with your recommenders.
I totally agree. And the law school application, there's so many moving parts, so many application fees, so many things that you kind of have to just check off. If you can check something off early, do it. Like you're going to be, fixing your personal statement and tweaking things. You're going to be submitting things depending on whether your scores, depending on when you're taking your LSAT and your scores come back and you're retaking it. There are things you just don't want to have to worry about. And something like your letter of rec is something you can get out of the way early. And so if you can just check that box and you've said that this is when it's going to come in, it's just going to be a world easier to kind of submit your applications when the time comes.
Fantastic. Oh, awesome. We see some questions coming in, so we'll make sure to get to them towards the end. Additionally, wanted to take a moment to draw your attention to the screen. We have a ton of awesome resources on our website that are all about law school admissions. So we have one called Law School Recommendation Letters, Juris Education. Quick Google search will pull that up. We highly encourage you to check out the website. We have a ton of resources on there, including some downloadables and I believe a brag sheet that you could potentially use for your recommenders. With that being said, I'd love to pass it back to you, ladies.
Great. So thank you so much for helping us with that. So kind of going off of what we've been saying and what Christina modeled really nicely, this idea of having an application theme, right? So if you can kind of hold on to a central narrative, and this is actually something that they teach you in law school if you end up doing litigation, you want to have a narrative and all of the ideas should go and support that main narrative, right? And so your recommenders are also a piece of the narrative and a piece of your overall application. And so you want to make sure that the letters are also in line with the overarching theme, which again goes back to how you can kind of guide them on either examples that you would like them to bring up, or sharing your personal statement and sharing what the theme is that you're going for, or even just outright saying, I'm really hoping that my applications are touching on these key points. Is there a way for you to incorporate those in your recommendation letter? Or do you feel comfortable speaking to those points in your recommendation letter? So making sure that all of it kind of aligns, highlighting your strengths, highlighting your achievements, connecting to your past experiences. Of course, you're not going to ask your recommendation letter or your recommendation writers, your recommenders, to talk about things that they don't know. So like it would be a little, I've had sometimes a student be like, can you talk about how great I am as a team member on my soccer team? And I'm like, no, I can't talk about that because I don't coach soccer and I have never seen you play. And so I can't write that. But I can talk about how you're like a great team player in the classroom, right? Like that's something that I can write about. And so making sure that you're not asking for things that don't make sense, but making sure that you still find ways to connect what you're doing with something that the recommender can talk about. And that I think goes exactly to the same thing about unique strengths. All of this should kind of come together. The themes, the strengths, the overarching story, all of that should kind of be well thought out and something that you've thought out before you ask your recommenders for their recommendation letter.
Right. And just to continue on that, something that was really helpful for me when I was thinking through my themes is, and I think this is applicable to every part of your application, not just your recommendation, even looking at any personal statement, anything that you write to give to a school. You want to think, okay, I wrote this. What do I want them to take away from this? Okay, I'm reading this paragraph and I want them to think that I have strong communication skills. I want them to think that I'm a leader. I want them to think that I can problem solve. I can do this. And so to the point that you were making earlier, if you are on a soccer team and you're like, the leader of your soccer team, and you have that another part of your application, like, oh, I really enjoy soccer, I'm a team leader, and you are able to create a narrative that kind of show your leadership skills, and then you also have your recommender talk about you as a leader in the classroom. Being a leader is a theme in your application, and you're able to pull on that in several parts of your application. So if you have a statement that says, I am the captain of my soccer team, and you write about a really impactful story about something in your soccer team, and then on your resume you're also the president of several clubs at your school, and then your professor is also saying that you lead in the classroom, you're getting that one narrative or that one thing that you want the schools to know in several parts in your application. And that's when it starts to come together, and that's when it starts to get crafted. So when you're thinking about, and I know we're talking about recommendations, but this kind of comes out to the broader themes of your application and how you can pull those themes in different aspects and kind of make it a stronger case. And so as you're thinking about what key skills you want to highlight, you want to have those being repeated, and so people can be like, oh yes, when I think of so and so, I think this, I think that, and this is who we want to be at our school, and we think this person will be a great candidate um, for a spot. So something to think about. Common pitfalls.
I think this goes with everything we've been saying. You don't want generic and vague letters. You do not want someone who plugs and chugs your name into a format that they already have. You don't want letters that don't give specific anecdotes. You want things that are like very specific to you, so it's very clear to the reader that this letter was specifically written for you. You don't want inconsistent information. This is actually something I see a lot. You've put something on your resume about like how long you've been in a position, and then the recommender accidentally is like, I've known the candidate for 3 years. And you're like, no, you've definitely known me for 4 years. I would just like verify with them, like, as a reminder, these are the classes I took with you, and these are the semesters I took them. That like, this is how long I've known you. This is how long we've worked together, to make sure that you're cross-referencing that information, and the reader isn't like, okay, who's lying here? Like, is it the candidate? Is the recommender? I don't know what's going on. Don't procrastinate. Don't request this last minute. Again, we're like aiming for just under the annoying threshold. And to do that well, you have to start early.
Awesome. So I think we're going into the common pitfalls a little more deeply. Again, generic, vague, it's just not going to stand out. There's too many candidates. Everyone has like the same GPA. Not everyone, but there's several candidates with the same GPA, several candidates with a similar LSAT. And the last thing you want is to be neck and neck with someone that has the same stats, and then they're like, well, actually, we don't know this person. Like, what is this letter? Okay, cool. Like, this person is a person. I guess this person exists. We don't really know anything else, and so we're gonna pick the other candidate that has like a stronger letter. So it's definitely something you just don't want to avoid.
Again, inconsistent information. You don't want that. You also don't want the letters to contradict each other. If you have like two academic ones or two people that are doing non-academic letters, you want those to kind of be speaking to the same things. You just never want the reader to be able to say, like, someone here did not do their homework, and I don't know if it's the candidate or if it's the recommender, because that is not a good look for you. And also, like, even if it's the recommender's fault, it still isn't a great look for you because you asked that recommender to write your recommendation letter. So you want to make sure that you're helping them cross their T's and dot their I's, even though some of those inconsistencies would not have been mistakes that you might have made yourself.
Procrastination, our favorite thing to do. We all procrastinate. I can't sit here and say never procrastinate. It's the worst thing. We all do it. But, when you're thinking about your applications, and you're going to procrastinate, but you should really, 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 when it's something that you can just check off, like I did it and I check it off and you feel great. And you don't need to say, I'm going to ask every professor today. Maybe you set a goal, like I'm going to ask one person today. I'm going to think through one letter, or maybe you split it up by, okay, today I'll think through I'll think through what I need to actually put together to send to the recommenders, or what information I want to highlight. And then another day you're like, okay, I'm actually going to ask, and you can split it up. And so it's not this huge task, but procrastination is not your friend. It's rolling admissions. You want to get it in early. And if it's something that you can just check off, it's just, you just got to do it. You just got to do it. Oh, Q&A.
Q&A, easily one of my favorite points of these presentations. We have a ton of questions. I'd love to just hop right in. So Aiden asks, I have good connections with local nonprofit leaders. If a school only allows 2 letters, would it be desirable to have a letter from them alongside a letter from a professor?
My answer to this is definitely yes. I think that I usually think of schools doing like 3 letters of recommendation. And I generally, for people who have only been out for a couple of years, I recommend 2 academic and 1 non-academic. You are going to a professional school, right? Like you are going to come out a lawyer. Most of us are not going to come out as academics. And so they want to actually hear about how can you work in the real world? What are your connections outside of the classroom? What is your work ethic? How do you get tasks done in a non-academic setting? Those are all things that the law school cares about, because they're going to send you out and they want you to be a good lawyer, and they want you to make money, so you'll donate money back to them. And, like they want you to succeed, mostly because they also want to succeed. But all that to say, I think that's a great idea. I think especially if you have those really personal connections with them, you've worked with them, they can speak to your work ethic, they can speak to your project management, your critical thinking, your emotional intelligence. All of those things are things that law schools will really care about. So if I were you, I would do a 1-on-1.
I also think that a lot of us are applying to more than one school, and not all schools have like a 2-letter max. So if you know that you have a recommender or a potential recommender that has a really close connection to one school, you can opt in LSAC to only have that recommender be sent to that one school. So you can have way more letters of rec than you actually use for all schools. Some schools allow like 1 million. They're like, send as many as you want. Some schools are like only 3. Some schools are like up to 4. So it just depends on the school, and most of us are applying to more than one school. So I think if you feel like someone can write you a really strong letter, ask for the letter, because you never, it could be another letter could fall through, other things could happen. You just never know. And if you have these letters, you can kind of make a game time decision, and you're not waiting for anything. Something happens, you don't have to be like, okay, now I have to go ask for a new letter because this fell through. You already have it, and now it's just a click of a button to kind of decide who you want to send what. And I think even on LSAC, some schools will say, we prefer these types of letters, or we prefer that. So I think it's a mix of the school's preference. It's a mix of just, having it. If you can have it, and it'll just be an LSAC, and it'll live there, and it'll be fun, and you'll get it. You can submit it or not, and so it's better to just be over prepared when it comes to letters of rec.
Awesome. Okay, so the next question it has a few parts to it. So we're going to start and we'll see where it goes. So we have a individual asking us, I graduated university in 2008 with a BA in psychology and have not had any additional academic work other than teaching English in South America. That's pretty awesome. I'm considering doing a highly reputable ABA approved paralegal program. Would such a program have benefits in securing acceptance to law schools? Thank you for your time. And then this person also let us know that they have, and unfortunately we won't be able to fully dive into every single person's specific case, but it looks like this person does have years of experience working as a caseworker as well. So I think we can open up this question a little bit more in terms of sort of the types of work experiences that would further help in securing acceptance to law schools, and the resume portion of it.
Yeah. So the first thing I'll say is, if you've been out of school for this amount of time, I don't think anyone is expecting you to have an academic letter of recommendation when you haven't been in school since 2008. I would even argue that I think that would probably be a waste of one of your recommendations, because you have probably changed a lot since then, and law schools know that you probably wouldn't even be the same type of student that you were back then. And so it's okay to really go hard on your professional kind of connections and supervisors and any of those sorts of relationships that you've had, and have those people write much stronger recommendation letters that are clearly more timely. So I wouldn't worry too much kind of on that front. I do think that and Christina, I would love to hear your opinion as someone who also got an MBA while they were in law school, but I think law schools generally like to see kind of certificates and other pursuit, like Michigan loved when people had like a master's already coming into the law school. I did know a number of people who had been paralegals before law school, but I don't know if I know anyone who did the program in the hopes that it would help them get into law school necessarily. I know people who like did a paralegal program, was a paralegal for a while, and that's what kind of solidified their desire to go to law school. And so they were able to talk about kind of that experience. I am a little less sure about what it would look like if you're trying to go like straight through from paralegal to law school, because I think part of the benefit of getting paralegal experience is like actually being a paralegal rather than getting just the program degree, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I agree. I think a lot of people become a paralegal to kind of see if they even want to be a lawyer or be in a legal profession, or, to kind of have a job, or, make connections in what they want to do. A lot of people are paralegals um, for big law firms, and they kind of use that connection to kind of get a job later. But when we think about people who like you, who seem like they kind of know what they want to do. You want to be in family law. You have extensive experience as a caseworker and an investigator. I don't think you need to be to go to paralegal, to do a paralegal program to get into law school. I think talking about your passion in family law, especially if it's a school that has a great family law program, I think they'd really appreciate hearing about your experience and your perspective, and just like leaning in on that. I think obviously it's nice to add things to your resume, but I would think, like, is it necessary? Do you want to quit your job and be a paralegal? If not, I wouldn't do it personally. Because you still have to go to law school for 3 years and suffer through that and take the bar and everything. So I think, why delay your legal career if you want to do it, you've seen it, you kind of just want to take the next step. I think it's logical for law school to be like, oh, like this makes sense, like that, like, and it even we were talking about theme this whole time, and having this background and being interested in family law is a really good theme for your application. And obviously having more certificates and stuff will be helpful, but I don't think it's necessary in your case.
Hopefully that helps. Please let us know. So Miriam asks, at what point in the semester should I approach my professor?
What a good question. I think it depends on when you're applying, right? So if you're someone who is a sophomore or a junior and you're dead set on law school, but you're not obviously going to apply until you finish college, not yet. It's way too soon. No one wants to think about writing a rec letter 3 years in advance. I think it also depends on when you're planning on applying. So if you're planning on applying in September versus December, those are different. I would say there's a different amount of time that I would give my recommender. I always try and think, especially for academic ones, they're not as responsive in the summer. They're not going to be as responsive over winter break. They are not going to be as responsive during finals, and they will not be as responsive at midterms. So if you're trying to apply September 1, you're late. You should have asked them probably 2 months ago. If you're hoping that they'll get it in by October, November, I would say you can ask them at the very beginning of the school year. I think generally the rule of thumb is 3 months, but I try and be very mindful of, like, are they on sabbatical? Are they on vacation? Are they grading a bunch of student things? And if they are, then I would give yourself at least an additional month.
Right. I agree with all those points. I think one of my recommenders was a professor that I think I had my sophomore year pretty early. And I think if you are, instead of asking them for a recommendation, maybe you could focus more on just maintaining the relationship with them. Because I mean, today you can say, I want to go to law school. You don't know what's going to happen in the next 2 years. I hope you go to law school. It'd be great. But, you know, things change, and you can get a great job and, delay it. And so I think just making sure that you keep in contact with that person, going to office hours, saying, hey, do you want to grab coffee? And, and when you have coffee, you can say, oh, I'm considering going to law school, talk about like your hopes and dreams and maybe how that relates to their class and why it was such a great class for you, and have that person really get to know you. And that could be more touch points for things they can talk about in your recommendation. You can ask them about, organizations they're a part of, around the school or in the school, and that could help you figure out, what extracurriculars to join, what leadership positions to do, and they could be a really good resource for things that you could ultimately end up adding to your application, and also could tailor your journey. And so when it's super early like that, you maybe want to use that professor more as a resource in terms of like your development as a student. And as you get closer to maybe your senior year when you want to apply, or if you're about to graduate and maybe you're not applying yet or something, maybe you can say, I'll send them an email or try to catch up and be like, hey, like, so great to like see, I'm graduating. It's been, it's been a whirlwind. Can't believe it. I do think I might want to apply to law school. Heads up, I might send you an email, like super casual, just to kind of get them thinking about you. And then again, as we were saying earlier, as early as possible, but also think about, as we said earlier, you want to know what themes you want to talk about in your recommendation letter. You want to be able to give them information. Again, me, I like was sending my statements, and if you don't have that information, then maybe you can't really maybe you can't really send the email, because then you're sending it, but it's premature because you don't really have the information that you want them to know. And so it's kind of a balancing act there. And so maybe that's a non-answer, but you really want to like think about strategically, how it would work out for you and where you are in your process. And obviously not too late, but at that sweet spot where you have like enough where you can say that this is what I want law schools to know about me.
You know what? That's a perfect segue, because we actually had somebody ask us how to approach their professors and start building a relationship with them. And I think you both really, really touch base on that. I'd also like to have, so we had a question come in. Somebody's asking that, or letting us know that they want to apply to law school a year from now, yet they have somebody already starting on a recommendation letter. But they're a little bit concerned that the date on the letters will be more than a year in the past by the time this individual actually applies. Does that matter, or is that too early?
I think it's actually very normal for people to kind of reuse the same recommenders for lots of different things. I know I've asked the same recommenders over and over and over again because they're still the people that know me best, no matter what I'm applying for. I would recommend that they change the date at the very least. And at the most, your recommender should probably just do one more quick pass over the letter of recommendation to make sure it all it doesn't sound dated, or like they need to change like how long they've known you, right? Last year it was 3 years, this year it's 4 years. So I don't think it's too early to write the substance of it if you've had a substantial relationship with them that they can already write about. But I would ask them to make sure that it's the like date at the top is updated, and just do a quick pass through. Although I would say I think most recommenders would generally do that anyway.
I agree. And I think, I don't think LSAC is open for applications for next year. So maybe this is different. I don't believe that you can upload your recommendations by yourself. You have to send them a link, and then they have to upload it on their end. And then you get to decide if you want it to be blind or not blind. So I think if a recommender is going to upload something onto a portal, they'll change the date and rethink things. So I think you'll be good on that end.
Awesome. So I know that we're right at time, but I'd love to sneak in one more question if that's okay with you both.
Yeah.
Awesome. So this individual asks or says, I read online that it's useful to provide the professor with some context on why I want to attend law school. In my case, my professors knew me through academia, so law school is a bit of a departure. Is this true? Is it worth sitting down and writing a whole new essay, or are a few sentences sufficient?
I would personally not write an essay. You're going to be writing a lot of essays for your law school application. You do not need to write another essay. I have seen recommenders ask. I have seen recommenders be like, I would like for you to send me an essay, or like provide me with a statement about why you want to go to law school. And if they ask for that, I think it's okay to do it because they've asked. But I wouldn't create it for without any reason to know that they will want it or that it would be useful to them. I think it's generally useful to obviously let them know you're applying and maybe share some information about like, I am interested in going because, but I think you're right that you can just do that in a couple of quick sentences and then mention, I'm happy to send over my resume and my personal statement and like blah, blah, like we've been talking about. But I would not recommend writing an additional essay that might not even be necessary or might not even be useful. We all have too much to do and not enough time.
I totally agree with that. And this goes to me thinking about like writing personal statements and kind of thinking through the theme of what you want like to be your application. Because and I wouldn't, if you do want to write an essay about why you want to go to law school, to kind of think through for yourself why you want to go to law school, I would write it, because I think it would be so helpful for yourself as you kind of have to figure out what you're going to write your personal statement about, how you're going to tailor your application. What do I actually want to say? What do I not want people to know about me? And then once you've written that, you can probably like condense it into a few sentences and then send that to a recommender, because now you got this bite size and true understanding of why you want to go to law school. If you can't kind of say in a few sentences and thinking like it feel like you probably need an essay, maybe it'd be good to kind of write it out. It can be like a starter personal statement. It could kind of like get the juices flowing and help you with a lot of explaining about law school, because you're gonna have so many essays. Some schools have interviews, so it could be super helpful later on in the process. But I totally wouldn't send anybody an extra essay to read unnecessarily.
Fantastic. We have a few more, I think a few more questions, but unfortunately that's all the time that we have today. As you can see on the screen, there's a QR code up there. You pull out your phone, scan the QR code, and it'll take you back to a free consultation page. And that'll really allow you to sit down one-on-one with one of our experts, one of our admissions consultants, who'll be able to go through case by case and really discuss whatever questions, comments, concerns you may have about your law school application, as well as provide extra support. So we want to make sure that we make that available to everyone on this call, and of course, everyone watching the recording later at home. With that being said, thank you everyone for attending. Tamara, Christina, thank you for joining us, and thank you for your wonderful insights. And I hope everyone has a fantastic evening.